good-sized man, or something that looks like a man.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was.
Welcome to Sasquatch Hypotheses.
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Zia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
Son of a bitch is about 6'9".
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
And the guy is on foot.
I don't know what... It's a big, real big person.
But it is a person.
Yeah, I'd say it was a person or somebody really big.
Good evening, folks. Welcome to Sasquatch Hypotheses. This is my first live show. I just got over 120 subscribers, so I thought I'd actually try to do this live show thing. A little late, probably nobody out there is going to watch this. It's actually 5 after 12. That clock behind me needs a new battery. And I actually made my first $2 on Google. It only took 2 years, but I actually got, my revenue says $2 now, which I won't get until I make $50, but that'll only take another, 2 to 5 years, I guess. Anyway, folks, tonight, I think I have an interesting show for you. I ran across this site that has some, what they call the classic Bigfoot counters, and I thought it would be interesting to go over one of these. William Rowe's sworn affidavit. He encountered a Bigfoot back in 1955, and at first he thought it was a grizzly bear. Let me go ahead and just read it to you. Okay, put it up here so that you can see it. I think you'll be able to read along with me, but I'm not sure how it's going to look to you. Okay. It's an affidavit, so he says, I, William Rowe of the city, blah, blah, blah. We'll skip that part. Exhibit A. Ever since I was a small boy back in the forest of Michigan, I have studied the lives and habits of wild animals. Later, when I supported my family in North Alberta by hunting and trapping, I spent many hours just observing the wild things. They fascinated me. But the most incredible experience I ever had with a wild creature occurred near a little town called John Cash, British Columbia. I have no idea how that's pronounced. About 80 miles west of Jasper, Alberta. That I can pronounce. I had been working on the highway near John Cash for about 2 years. In October 1955, I decided to climb 5 miles up Mica Mountain to an old deserted mine just for something to do. I came in sight of the mine about 3 o'clock in the afternoon after an easy climb. I had just come out of a patch of low brush into a clearing when I saw what I thought was a grizzly bear in the bush on the other side. I had shot a grizzly bear near that spot the year before. This one was only about 75 yards away, but I didn't want to shoot it, for I had no way of getting it out. So I sat down on a small rock and watched, my rifle in my hands. I could see part of the animal's head and the top of one shoulder. A moment later, it raised up and stepped out into the opening. Then I saw it was not a bear. This, to the best of my recollection, is what the creature looked like and how it acted as it came across the clearing directly toward me. I'll scroll this up a little for you there. My first impression was of a huge man, about 6 feet tall, almost 3 feet wide, and probably weighing somewhere near 300 pounds. It was covered from head to foot with dark brown silver-tipped hair, but as it came closer, I saw by its breast that it was a female. And yet its torso was not curved like a female's. Its broad frame was straight from shoulders to hip. Its arms were much thicker than a man's arms and longer, reaching almost to its knees. Its feet were broader proportionately than a man's, about 5 inches wide at the front and tapering to much thinner heels. When it walked, it placed its heel placed the heel of its foot down first, and I could see the gray-brown skin or hide on the soles of its feet. It came to the edge of the brush the bush I was hiding in, within 20 feet of me, and squatted down on its haunches. Reaching out its hands, it pulled the branches of the bush toward it and stripped the leaves with its teeth. Its lips curled flexibly around the leaves as it ate. I was close enough to see that its teeth were white and even. The shape of the creature's head somewhat resembled a Negro. The head was higher in the back than the front. The nose was broad and flat. The lips and chin protruded farther than its nose, but the hair that covered it, leaving bare only the parts of its face around the mouth, nose, and ears, made it resemble an animal as much as a human. None of this hair, even on the back of its head, was longer than an inch, and that on its face was much shorter. Its ears were shaped like a human's ears, but its eyes were small and black like a bear's, and its neck also was unhuman, thicker and shorter than any man's I had ever seen. If you hear that, that's my dog in the background. What are you doing? All right, sorry, folks. As I watched this creature, I wondered if some movie company was making a film at this place and that what I saw was an actor made up to look partly human and partly animal. But as I observed it more, I decided it would be impossible to fake such a specimen. Anyway, I learned later there was no such company near that area, nor in fact did anyone live up Mica Mountain, according to the people who lived in Yoon Cache. Finally, the wild thing must have got my scent, for it looked directly at me through an opening in the bush. A look of amazement crossed its face. It looked so comical at the moment I had to grin. Still in a crouched position, it backed up 3 or 4 short steps, then straightened up to its full height and started to walk rapidly back the way it came. For a moment, it watched me over its shoulder as it went, not exactly afraid, but as though it wanted no contact with anything strange. The thought came to me that if I shot it, I would possibly have a specimen of great interest to scientists the world over. I had heard stories of the Sasquatch, the giant hairy Indians that live in the legends of British Columbian Indians, and also many claim are still in fact alive today. Maybe this was a Sasquatch, I told myself. I leveled my rifle. The creature was still walking rapidly away, again turning its head back to look in my direction. I lowered the rifle. Although I have called the creature it, I felt now that it was a human being, and I knew I would never forgive myself if I killed it. Just as it came to the other patch of brush, it threw its head back and made a peculiar noise that seemed to be half laugh and half language, and which I can only describe as a kind of a whinny. Then it walked from the small brush into a stand of lodgepole pine. I stepped out into the opening and looked across a small ridge just beyond the pine to see if I could see it again. It came out on the ridge a couple of 100 yards away from me, tipped its head back again, and again emitted the only sound I had heard it make. But what this half laugh, half language was meant to convey, what it was meant to convey, I do not know. It disappeared then, and I never saw it again. I wanted to find out if it lived on vegetation entirely or ate meat as well. So I went down and looked for signs. I found it in 5 different places, and although I examined it thoroughly, could find no hair or shells or bugs or insects, so I believe it was strictly a vegetarian. I found one place where it had slept for a couple of nights under a tree. Now, the nights were cool up the mountain at this time of the year especially, and yet it had not used a fire. I found no sign that it possessed even the simplest of tools or a single companion while in this place. Whether this was a Sasquatch, I do not know. It will always remain a mystery to me unless another one is found. I hereby declare the above statement to be in every part true, to the best of my powers and observation and recollection. Signed, William Rowe. I thought that was a very, very interesting encounter. And the reasons I thought it's not like the other encounters that we hear about, where, I mean, usually it's a male. This was a female. And usually when you encounter the male, it either, just walks off when or it screams at you, or it does a bluff charge. This one here, being a female, uh, first of all, it was alone, which was a surprise to me. Um, in the animal kingdom, especially, I mean, to my knowledge, well, not just primates, but females aren't usually left alone. You'll find males wandering around by themselves when they're actually looking to start their own, group. Once they become of age, they get sent out by the alpha male of the group that they were born in, and then they have to do their own thing. That's not the case usually. I've never heard of it with females. And I found it very interesting that this female was by herself. And she's not that old. I mean, if you think that the accepted opinion is that adult female Sasquatches are over 7 feet tall, they're 7 to 8 feet tall. And he said this one was only 6 feet tall. That makes her more like maybe a 15, 16-year-old girl as far as we're concerned. That makes me wonder if she wasn't orphaned. I kind of doubt that they would send their females out on their own to like find a guy. That kind of doesn't make sense. It doesn't jive with the rest of the animal kingdom, I guess. And the fact that she didn't, that she didn't scream, and I think when he's referring to the whinny, that she didn't scream. She made kind of a laugh. What did he call it? Let me see if I can find this here again real quick. Laugh language is what he called it. He said it was kind of a mix of laugh and language. That to me sounds like that what everyone else refers to as samurai chatter. I think that's just the way he describes it. He says a kind of a whinny. The horses go like that when they're whinnying. I think that's what he's referring to. And which is interesting because you never hear any Bigfoots doing that. Ron Moorhead heard samurai chatter, and on the Sierra, I think it's Sierra Sounds, he tried like mimicking them back, and they were kind of going back and forth like that. But that's the only time you really have ever heard, or at least I've ever heard, that a Bigfoot has done some kind of communication towards a human, except for in this encounter. This female talked in her language to this guy when she was leaving, and then again when she came into the other clearing. I find that interesting. And he says she wasn't afraid, but when I envision in my mind this encounter, to me, I think she was. I think that's what the chattering was. It was for a bit, maybe, if she was out and, in her season and maybe she thought he was a good looking dude and she was saying, come back to my place. I don't know. But I tend to think she was probably, either telling him don't, leave me alone, like a girl would if she's worried or concerned about somebody, following her or whatever. Or maybe because he picked up his rifle, they say that Sasquatch know what rifles are. I kind of don't think that they do. I mean, if they've seen one, possibly, probably they make some kind of a connection there, But if you run across one that had never seen a human with a rifle, no, I don't think so. It's not like that would imply that there's some kind of a social structure and that they're all spreading the word about rifles. So the only other option would be if they are spreading the word about rifles and she knows what a rifle is, that maybe she was thanking him for not shooting her, you know. So that would be the only couple of things. But it's interesting that she used language instead of just screaming at him, which is what you usually hear. You usually only hear about screams, Sasquatch screaming at people. Um, so that's pretty much it for this. This is just a short, my first test with a live show. If I'm going to view the video, if it turns out to be, it turns out that it came out okay, that it's not all crappy looking, I'll try to do live shows in the future, regular live shows, and make that a habit so that kind of further the channel along. I guess now that I've got 100 subscribers, I don't lose them all, so might as well make a live show. And hopefully, I've got one guy, if any of you have looked in the comments, that is working up the courage to come on the show and talk about his encounter. And I've also got another guy that I'm talking to that I'm going to try and bring on the show. We had spoke if in one of the other videos, I think actually my last video maybe, or my last podcast, I was talking about an incident that Bear brought up on his, I think it was Coast to Coast or something, or Dark Radio or something like Dark Side Radio, where he talked about this girl who had been raped raped and killed by a Sasquatch and left on the hood of her car. So this guy told me it was crap, that he knew people in law enforcement and that he was going to, that, he asked them about it and they said there was no such incident. So I ended up talking to the guy on the phone and explained to him the details of it. And he again called, because he originally, I guess, had asked the guy to look for a murder case or something. And he wasn't looking for a cold case. And I think that was the difference. So I gave him the exact location where the girl was found and down to the date that she was found. And he went ahead and called his law enforcement connections. And he got back to me and said that I guess the case is there and that it's not a cold case. It's actually been sealed, which is very unusual. So he is right now waiting to hear back from, I asked him to, check a few other things out about that case. And he's waiting to hear back from the guy. And then I'm going to see if I can get him to come on this show and discuss what went on, his communications back and forth, and what he was able to find out and that kind of thing. And this guy has also had his own Bigfoot encounter, so we'll see if he'll share those with us as well. Anyway, where are we on time? Well, we're at 20 minutes, and I've been wanting to make these things shorter anyway. So, as usual, if y'all want to get in touch with me, you can contact me at sasquatchhypotheses@gmail.com. And the audio version of this will be at sashype.blogspot.com. And until the next time, y'all take it easy. Hopefully this comes out okay. Hopefully it'll work.